Utah Jazz, they were the standard of how to build a team, right? Well-roundedness, having an identity, and a lot of teams were trying to keep up with them. Whereas I think like the 2000s, I think it was a flux of talent that was fighting for the top spot because they all had the ability to be able to impact the game at an exceptional level, right? The Duncans, the KGs, the Kobe's, the Shaquille O'Neals, especially on the latter half, the LeBrons, the D Wades, right? And so like I think that competition, it varies, right? On what are you looking for in terms of impact, right? Um, so yeah, from that standpoint, yeah, I agree with Road. Like holistically, like it just depends on what is the standard. How are you trying to meet that standard, and are you measuring yourself to?
Yeah. Dart, you want to follow up on that?
Yeah, I think we've been talking about this for some time. I that's essentially what I've been talking about this entire time is that you play in your era and you're the best in your era, and the eras have different priorities in respect to what they look at in a player. The NBA is famously called a copycat league, um, and people just try to mimic things. And the last, I don't want to say the last great player, but one that's really made a huge difference for trying to mimic excellence or greatness is the league's trying to mimic Steph Curry. And the matter of fact is you're not going to mimic Steph Curry. You're not going to get another Steph Curry because Steph Curry is one of one in respect to what he does. So, but they're trying to do that by getting these elite 3-point shooters. Now, it's worked in its own way. It's how the league is playing. And it's not my cup of tea in respect to watching the game. However, in respect to them being competitive, it's how they're approaching the game right now. So, but yeah, no, I don't think that it's, that
Did you cut
You know
out?
the
what I think?
capability of
Oh,
these players
Oh,
across time. I got really bad lag. So anyway,
I
oh,
see.
yeah,
okay.
You know,
I
problem.
don't got much
You,
else to say. That's fine.
you know what I think happened, and it's so funny because I think Don Nelson is the pioneer of this. I think the pioneer of this era, this modern era, is Don Nelson. And I always wondered, right? Because I used to go back. I used to just kind of like try to make up teams in my head. I mean, really, I'm a weird guy where I used to just make up leagues and stuff in my head with fictional players, right? You know how people do it on it's all fictional players, right? The whole alternate universe. I used to wonder when we were playing back when the league was all spinner, power forward, small forward, shooting guard, point guard, right? I used to wonder what would happen if a team tried to try to actually play in the NBA or play at any level with all wings or all or like three, you basically small forwards. You put five, you have five best small forwards. Because one thing I've noticed over time is small forward really kind of dictates the way you play. He's the link between the backcourt and the front court. So Don Nelson was the first guy to, as you seen at the NBA level in '07, to kind of throw out the play position as basketball. People credit D'Antoni with that, but no, even he, because he just basically moved everybody over. Like Amari was a four, he put him in a five. Marion was a three, put him at the four. So he pretty much slowed everybody over and ran that style. But Don Nelson in '07 against Dirk and them put out a team. He put out his best four guards and basically Matt Barnes as the one front court player, and they took out the Dallas Mavericks who were the first seed. If y'all remember, and it was like, okay, now that pretty much what 4 years before, no, 2 years before Steph got drafted, really 4 or 5 years before he became an all-star or player worth mentioning. That pretty much gave Steph the land and the Golden State Warriors the landing to become what they were. If everybody remembers, David Lee got hurt in the beginning of that first championship season in the preseason, and Draymond Green was not a starter. He was a sixth man. He was coming off the bench. Draymond Green wound up being, okay, I'll make him my 4. I won't force another 6'9", 6'10" guy in there. And I'll go with Draymond Green, who's pretty much 6'6", and I'll make him my 4, put him next to Bogut, and we'll go from there. And they came out 15-0. And it showed you that, hey, you can play this positionless style. If Draymond Green was a good enough rebounder and defender, you didn't have a lot of big men that was gonna like take advantage of Draymond Green, and here you go. So again, there's that style now has become, they want to copycat that style, and the league is trying to copycat that style, and obviously teams full of 4 to 5 3-point shooters are the way to go. Like, you can't really, like, we're at the point now where you cannot have just a guy who rebounds but cannot shoot the 3. You might be able to get away with 2 guys that can't shoot the 3, but pretty much if you don't have 3 guys that can shoot the 3 on the court at all times, that's it. Back in the day, back in the 90s, you would have 1 or 2 3-point shooting specialists. Everybody else is mid-range, post players, and everything else. So again, when you look at things, you just gotta understand how the game was played. Like I said, when I first pulled over in Almanac, I went back to 1946, and I figured out who was the best player. And Jumping Joe Fulks, the first superstar of the NBA. Right? Era by era, you start to see who's the best scorer, who's the best winner. Like, when you start to understand that Bill Russell,
Neil Johnston.
Neil Johnson was another one. I mean, again, Joe Fulks he had won the first scoring title, averaging 23. I don't think anybody else averaged more than 16, right, or something like that. If I, these are just things when I was 11 years old, pulling open the almanacs. There's no Google. There's no, the internet. I didn't have a house computer. You understand what I'm saying? So,
but I don't know. I don't think that, like, I think to your point about having 3, spacers on the floor, I feel like it was always pivoting towards that once they realized the value of the 3-point shot. Like, once Bird set the standard of how impactful spacing the floor and forcing defenses to bend at your personal skill set, I think the league was always like pivoting to that point. I just think that, like, at this point now we're at a standstill in terms of figuring out the value of spacing. So like a Bam Adebayo, Bam doesn't shoot threes frequently at all, right? Like, if you see him shoot a 3, it'll surprise you. But he finds other ways to force the defense to bend. A player like Zion Williamson, Zion doesn't take 3s at all. He's a slasher galore. But the way in which he finds a way to force the defense to shift towards him while he's on the perimeter, because they don't want him to gain, momentum. Like, I think that we're at the point right now in NBA history where we're trying to where like players and teams are figuring out different ways to be able to, how do we shift the defense? How do we create openings to make a more efficient offense? I think I feel you for like the majority of it. I just think that we're at a point right now where we're trying to figure out the dynamics of how to space the floor. Like, there's different ways to skin a cat type shit.
Yeah, and again, you talk about guys like Zion and Bam, they have a certain what they call gravity, right? Where they're drawing defenders in a way to keep, like, Zion has a certain amount of gravity. Obviously, again, the post up plays back to the basket. So I'm really looking right now at the 3-point evolution, right? And I go year by year. The first year where teams average over 20 3-point attempts a game was 2013. That was LeBron's last MVP year. Now you're at the point this year where 37.6 was the league average, right? So, yeah, the first explosion obviously was the line shortening, right? That was meant. Mm-hmm. That's what the first year it went from 9.9 to 15.3, and then 20, and then it steadily went up. 2017, once they saw that the Warriors were not going away, because I remember even Charles Barkley was like, "This can't win. This is not winning basketball, right?" Mm-hmm. And obviously they get KD, They win in 17, they win in 18, and everybody's been copycatting since. So it's like, even like, think about that. Even you're talking about 8 years of this 3-point revolution, where, you know, look, I'm looking at overall field goal attempts. You're talking about what, this is like 40% now of all shots, 3-point shots. Well, is LeBron's last MVP, you're talking less than 25%. So, you know, I mean, again, you just, when people look at stats, and that's why when you talk about stats with context, that matters. You understand what I'm saying? That's what, and I can guarantee you, right? If you go and look at the field goal, I mean, field goal, the weighted field goal percentage, EFG,
Effective
field goal percentage.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that with the 3-point shot and with the 3-point shot attempts, those went up as well, because again, that's the math formula. But that's what people get in trouble, because when you look at that, if you look at basketball as a math formula, and finally, I guess the analytics guys won. Hey, play this way because this makes sense. Shoot more threes. It's a better percentage shot.
Yes.
You know,
league wide, yes. It has gone up, but like the players that are like abnormalities, they're still at the top of the top. Like Shaquille O'Neal is still at the top when it comes to effective field goal percentage, because it doesn't matter how many threes you can crack. You're not, you know what I'm saying? You're not Shaq. Like Shaq was able to generate shots at ease. Hakeem Olajuwon, you're not him. You know what I'm saying? So like, I feel like I think when it comes to like, because I think I know where you're going with it, contextualizing scoring in today's game and using those true shooting and effective field goal percentages like statistical categories, I think that is a great context to add in the sense of you were in an era where you had a focal point of your offense naturally puts you at an advantage compared to prior eras. But I think it's also the ability to knock it down at a higher rate than league average that should also go noticed as well. Like a person like I don't want to use Curry because Curry is like, you know what I'm saying? Like Curry's Curry. But like using somebody like Harden. Harden is above average for his era by, I want to say, I could check for sure, but I think it's by like +5 percentage wise, right? In terms of effective field goal percentage and true shooting percentage for his era. But we understand that a large portion of his shot dosage was shooting threes. But when you're knocking it down at that rate, even compared to your era, understanding that your era shoots more threes than before, that's still a very valuable asset as a scorer that you can knock it down. Plus, like 4 out of 12 attempts, you know what I'm saying? 5 out of 11. Like that's a valuable asset. So I think that context is necessary, but there are some outliers where it's like, even if you add the context, it only boosts their case.
Yeah. You want to kind of get, I mean, that's a great point too. And I think that's kind of a universally accepted truth that, yeah, like you said, there are outliers or, you know, superstars in every player that, you know, would easily slide into any era, right? And you have the people who excel in any era. And to kind of answer that question, or I guess get everyone's take on that, with the Kobe thing, I think I'm not to go down the rabbit hole too far because obviously I'm a huge Kobe stan as far as, you know, I think that he's top 10 and I've debated such, but I think like, you know, when you're talking about, I think we touched upon this, but when you're just talking about ranking players all the time, like I think a lot of players put him over LeBron as far as their ranking simply because of the ring count. But I mean, I know that all of us have more and more, I guess, nuanced ranking system. But what do you think about just using rings to put players over, regardless of totality of resume? Is it legit, or obviously it's a thing?
It depends on how nuanced you're.
Let me start, Ro. I haven't talked in like 15 minutes.
You got
it. I think with the championship rings, just excusing everything the rest of a resume is not the right way to go. Now, I think the opposite is true too. To excuse the rings as not being part of the resume I think is the wrong thing to do as well. I think it is a measurement. I think it's important. Now, for example, if we talk greater, not better, I think that if there was a player, hypothetically, no specifics, if there was a player that averaged, I don't know, 10 points per game and 3 rebounds, 3 assists, something like that, but the point of it never got awarded any sort of all-star, any sort of all-NBA, any sort of anything. I think a guy who's won a championship, who's got less stats than that, is a greater basketball player because they were associated with the team. They were playing on that team that won a championship. So I think that's a way. I think that's a way to measure it. In respect to the Kobe thing versus LeBron, I think Kobe, like I said, we talked about a little bit earlier. I think there's 2 ways to look at how people are greater than each other. Is the totality of a career by adding it like in summation, adding everything up per season that they played and then putting it together and looking at the result, or you can average everything that they did and then look at it that way. So I think Kobe on average had a better or a greater career than LeBron James. However, I think in total, LeBron James had a greater career. So I think rings do matter. I think it's a matter of again, it's whatever you think, but they wouldn't be lauded as much. They wouldn't be talked about as much. And obviously, that's the whole point of playing every season is to win the championship. So I think it matters.
Casual.
Real quick, C-Dub says casual speech being civil on the panel. I'm being civil because Ro hadn't said nothing stupid yet. No, I think when it comes to like ring counting in terms of making making a greater case, you guys have heard me say it multiple times on here, and I'm synonymous with it. I believe that it's just a falsified way of valuing a person's career. I think a person's career is far more valuable when you contextualize their impact to the game. Now you can use their run to the championship to be able to sort of add the confirmation of how dominant they were as a player, i.e. Shaquille O'Neal in 2000, i.e. Kobe Bryant in 2010. But I think that just blindly using rings, the rings that they won in X year to be able to put them over a player B, I think that is a very flawed way to value a person's career, because when going to a person like Kobe Bryant, I think Kobe Bryant's career in terms of how he was able to impact the game in a myriad of different ways, being essentially a chameleon in terms of whatever they needed him to be. First in the first three-peat, gradually coming from a defensive stopper that could also be able to put the ball on the floor and create opportunities, to by the end of the three-peat being a bona fide superstar, being able to score at heights that mimic Shaquille O'Neal while also being able to still have some level of defensive value and facilitating chops, growing like more well-rounded. I think that is more of an accurate depiction of who Kobe Bryant is, rather than he won 3 championships in a row. I think to somebody like LeBron James, blindly just looking at 4 championships, his record of 4-10, rather than mentioning all of the ways in which he impacted himself. Not impacted himself, but impacted the team, while also being able to lay forth his versatility in a myriad of different ways. Like when he goes to Miami and he's having to learn to be more imposing of a scorer, learning to be more willing to score in the post, rather than just settling for at the top of the key slashes. Because somebody mute their mic real quick. You know what I'm saying? And then by the time he gets to Cleveland, being more reliable of a floor spacer. Like, I think that those are more valuable, in my opinion. I think those are more valuable assessments. Hey, Scott, mute up, bro. I think that those are more valuable of assessments on these players, rather than just blindly just pointing to the championships that they won or their finals record.
I couldn't agree more. And just we'll get it, everyone's takes here too. But aircraft carrier, that's not true, man. I absolutely count defense. In fact, my top 5 are who I consider the best two-way players of all time, right? But to go with your point, guys, I think we're in lockstep on that. Is that just using. I mean, if you're contributing to winning consistently, and obviously you have the Finals MVPs, I think that boosts your case. But you're right. There's a lot that goes into winning a championship beyond one player's greatness, right? And regardless of how great they can be, night in, night out, you have to be in many ways in a lucky situation, right? To have consistently great roster, especially if you're going to string together multiple titles, to put yourself in there. A lot of stuff has to go right. Players want to have to stay injury free, things like that, not, season in and season out. And a lot of that's beyond their control. And so, do I use rings to some degree? Sure. But when you're talking about just players when you're ranking them, I believe that that's probably, to me, one of the least important parts of the overall, measurement is just the ring count. Like I said, I'm not going to put, what's a good example? I'm not going to put, like Dirk Nowitzki over Karl Malone just because he has one ring, right? I think Karl Malone's still a greater player than Dirk Nowitzki all time. But I'm not going to use, same thing with John Stockton. I'm not going to put Gary Payton over John Stockton because Gary Payton won an ancillary ring in 2006, right? And so I still think John Stockton is that guy. But it's just like that, the totality of a resume, and that's why obviously we put I think LeBron over Kobe, just to answer his question. But I think we're all kind of share that same opinion. But let's get Scott's take on that. On whatever you want to comment on, Scott. You talk about eras, or are we talking about how we rank players? What's your take?
Eras. First of all, we should do relative to era. How great were you against your comp? Not this. How great what if you can play in this era? That's first take. And first of all, the reason why today's NBA needs the spacing, to go look at the 2000s. Guys like Kobe, T T Mac, they weren't really maximized enough because they didn't have the floor spacing to help their weaknesses. And even in 80s and 90s era utilized spacing better than the 2000s because the 2000s were more big lineups. They're running more slashers instead of a 3-point shooter specialist. And I think the 90s Rockets, people love to say the Suns, but the 90s Rockets really show how valuable floor spacing can be because they had a dominant big man in the post and they got elite shooters on the yes.
Oh, no, not you. I was going to ask Traffic if I could be able to answer, Travis, if I could be able to answer the question that Carrie
Yeah, after Scott's take, you can definitely
after
answer that for
Scott.
sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I think the 90s Rockets help like maximize Akeem's ability to win a championship because before what's the coach names? I can't remember the coach name, but before Akeem got there, they weren't really using like that to his fullest potential. When once they got floor spacing, they can stretch the floor, and defenses back then had to either help on Akeem or they can let Akeem cook in the post. Like the Kings, the Suns, the Mavericks, there are teams that they were ahead of their time, like playing positionless basketball. And I think teams like the 2010s looked at that, saying if they can be dominant in an era where and it's quite it's, it's quite what's the word uh it's quite I don't understand how the Kings and the Suns were not able to win championships with those rosters because they were ahead of their time. They were pushed to pace, very force space team, but they were still able to not win the championship. So I think, and I think the Heat went a next wave with that, but the Heat had defenders. They were able to play small, able to have floor spacers like Shane Battier and uh, Chris Anderson, Norris Cole that can space out the floor. They had guys like Chris Bosh and LeBron who could play at the 4 or 5, be solid rim protectors. And I think the Warriors maximized it to its fullest potential. And I think the Rockets, even though people say they took too many threes, which to a certain extent that's true, they were almost able to win a championship unless Chris Paul didn't went down. So I think floor spacing mattered since the '80s because the '80s and '90s still had good floor space like uh, Dan Marley, uh, who was the role player in the Celtics? He was a great 3-point shooter. Uh, I can't
You
remember his
talking
name.
about Dana Barrows? There's a lot of guys that could shoot
Yeah,
back then. A lot of
yeah,
guys.
they
Mark
could shoot.
Price. Mark Price
Yeah,
was ahead of his time too.
Mark Price paved the way for a guy like Steve Nash. S- So yeah, I think
I,
spacing. Oh,
yeah, I can see it. I can see it.
yeah.
We'll go ahead and take that question there.
Oh, yeah, because I don't want to spend too much time because I know Ro still wants to answer. Yeah, and so aircraft carrier, all basically what what floor spacing is like how effectively can an offensive player position themselves across the court to create wide open areas for ball handlers, cutters, shooters. You know what I'm saying? Forcing the defense to cover more ground. And we understand the laws of physics. The more area you have to cover, the more likely you are able to make a mistake. And so when we're saying it relative to this era, I think spacing is forcing defenses to sort of have a lot of mishaps in terms of back cuts and stuff like that. And that therefore it's allowing more opportunities at the rim, which is also tenfold opening more opportunities at the 3-point line. Does that make sense? I can give you an example if you need me to. Just let me know in the chat. But go ahead, Ro.
Yeah. So okay. So yeah. Well, so I'm gonna go back to the championships thing. Ring count is something I count, and as I say, it's a if I think players are equal, right? Like or in the neighborhood or ballpark as far as how good they were and how great they were, then ring count is gonna be my separator, right? Obviously you would have to be on you. I would have to think your top 10, and then I'm gonna say, okay, well, ring count. Like if you got 5 rings, this guy has 3. All right, now I'm gonna separate it. But then before I get to the ring count, I'm going to look at one thing that I consider if everything was equal. Right? Let's say we got 2 teams where Vegas got them 50-50, right? It's a whole pickle. There's no point spread, right? Even the 7-game series. Which star are you picking? Now, if I thought that both players had equal teams, you know, if both players had equal teams, I'm picking LeBron. I'm picking Kobe over LeBron. And again, I'm going to look at just the history of it. It's the history of them in big series, similar opponents. Like Kobe played the Spurs many times. The Spurs were one of those teams, even when LeBron had Dwayne Wade, right, and Chris Bosh. They gave him fits. It was Boris Diaw and Danny Green and young Kawhi Leonard giving him fits. Well, early on it was Bruce Bowen and all that triple teaming and double teaming. Again, Kobe could play the double team better. So, like in the midst of in the era of a Kobe versus LeBron, I'm going to consider that. And one thing when you talk, let's go back to errors because I'm sitting here looking at the numbers. That's one thing I love, man. I don't sit there and go to Basketball Reference to make points. So when they sit there and say certain errors are bigger, faster, and stronger, I'm sitting here and looking at the whole numbers from 1946 until last year. The average player from 1969 on up was 6'7", around 205. Then one point it got to 220. It was only 4 years where the average player was below went back to 6'6", and that was for the previous 6 years. Then it went back to 6'7". So the idea of bigger, faster, stronger, because they would show you guys like Randy Smith doing the same dunks that Russell Westbrook and E Rose could do back in the 70s. Like the bigger, faster, stronger thing is such a myth because the average player is been the same size for the past 40, 50 years. And that goes to show you now the only thing you're looking at is the play style. is the play style differential. And again, as we see, the 3-point shot was it floors right. Because they'll say on other channels, right, that I continue to do a lot of debates on, that guys didn't shoot the three back then because they couldn't shoot the three. Nonsense. Yeah, we watched Mahmoud Abdul Rauf and the big, what is he, 56 now, 57? Just shoot the lights out of the ball. I mean, and this is the thing. The only thing that you can say about a guy like Mahmoud Abdul Rauf is he played in an era where, number one, in his size, you better be a point guard. Like he was really a 2 guard, but they made him into a point guard when he was really more of a scorer, and he didn't have the green light to shoot as many threes. If he played in this era, he would be celebrated. Again,
I've always said that Abdul Rauf is the greatest player in NBA history.
I mean, listen, he was the first jersey I ever owned, but he was an amazing player, man. He was an amazing scorer. He almost if he played 3 years at LSU and was challenging Pistol Pete scoring records in college.
So are you saying, Ro, that you don't think that athletes in today's sports, just the sports realm, basketball, football, all of that, are you saying that you don't think that they actually have evolved and become bigger, faster? Wow.
No,
I think
they haven't.
I think
I don't think so either.
They haven't, again, because you can look at film. Again, they'll show you. I saw, again, it was on Instagram. They were showing you all these amazing Russell Westbrook, Baron Davis. Look, Baron Davis was amazing, bro. They were just showing on AOH, the live stream over there. They were showing Baron Davis getting the 3-on-1, the dunk on the Karolinko. They did this in the 70s, guys. It just what we didn't have? They didn't film every game. These games weren't live. Wasn't millions of people watching. But guys, every move that they could do now, they could do back. Again, shout out Tom Chambers. Tom Chambers. Again, people will tell you Tom Chambers was Kevin Durant before Kevin Durant.
Whoa.
And that dunk on. See, again, I think you got to watch some film. Because that dunk he did on Mark Jackson, shout out to Mark Jackson, was fucking nasty. I know. See, it's so funny. Tom Chambers was more explosive than Kevin Durant, and every bit the scorer. If you look at context,
OKC KD clears Tom Chambers as explosiveness.
What were you saying, Travis?
So, I guess I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole and wrap it up pretty soon, but that, I guess, your take there on our athletes just, getting bigger and stronger. I think, and I'll get your take here in a second. I think we've come so far as obviously we have better dietary routines, better ways of working out, more efficient ways of building muscle. Things it's not that guys are just bigger and faster. That doesn't really make any sense. It's just that we have much better ways of
better training, better facilities.
Yeah. What's your take, Dart?
Yeah, it more or less goes along the lines of that. Is that it's more focused on. I don't want to say more focused on, but the aspect of the sports science inclusion into a lot of these professional teams is a lot more widespread. Wilt Chamberlain, if evolution, is real in this, why is Wilt Chamberlain behind everybody? Wilt Chamberlain, that's just one example. Now, there's also the aspect of is that the population has been growing dramatically. I think since the 60s and 70s, I think that the population is more than doubled. So you have more people in general that are coming in. But in respect to our people, bigger, stronger, faster, absolutely not. It's just a matter of how they're integrating these things into the professional sports or the college. It's another business aspect of it that they're bringing into it. It's not that people didn't train. Weight training. We were talking about it yesterday in the NBA. Bob Pettit was the first known weight trainer in the NBA, and then Wilt Chamberlain, and it's been evolving ever since. But the aspect of it is that it's not that people are bigger, stronger, faster. Evolution doesn't happen in 50 years. There's some aspects of sports science and it being more professional in respect to that business side of integrating that into the teams and such. But no, players are not bigger, stronger, faster at heart, because there's even a lot of in respect to, Rex likes to bring this up. The long jump record has been the same record since
1968.
The 60s, 70s.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hold on, I'm gonna
So,
share a link in the chat. I want to share a link in the chat what I'm looking at, and y'all can see for yourself. The average player is still 6'7", around 215, 220. Like
Well,
it
I
really
just want to
hasn't
comment on this
moved.
really fast too. Aircraft carrier. One second. I mean, and you might be right about that comment about Jack Johnson and Tyson Fury, but like I said, are you taking like Tyson Fury with all the film he's been able to watch, all the fighters he's been able to study, all of his equipment?
Travis.
I mean, Jack, that's an advantage.
Of course that's an advantage. That's evolution. Apple, yes, that's
wrong word.
No, it's the absolute right word, because when it comes to technology, when it comes to training, when it comes to nutrition, equipment, those things have evolved to the point in which, yes, they're going to have a more advantageous situation now than they did back then.
I agree with that.
Into his point, into Rose's point of mentioning the league average of on Basketball Reference. One, I urge you to go and look at the NBA.com rather than Basketball Reference when it comes to exact like data of like weight, height, stuff like that. Basketball Reference, they miss with that very often. But even still, using a weight average or a height average does not describe bigger, stronger, because we've seen people that are 200 pound for pound be much stronger than somebody who's 230.
But then casual, this is what I mean though.
Your weight doesn't decipher who's stronger. It just tells you how much weight you're carrying around.
But casual, this is what I mean. You're talking about training and techniques. You're also talking about the fact, in the 70s and the 80s, early 80s, an ACL tear, your career was over. You had to let it naturally heal. Obviously, yeah. So you have surgeries that can correct what used to be a career-ending injury.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all things that help today's player. But the actual genetics, see, again, as he said, now Will Chamberlain, right? We don't have a Will Chamberlain type beast. Even Giannis is not. If Will Chamberlain, we could clone him and stand him right next to Giannis. Giannis would look small next to Will Chamberlain. He would look lean. He would look thin next to, you know what I'm saying? So, but Will Chamberlain, as we said, like he didn't shoot his DNA in anybody where they had a baby that came out with another Will. You understand what I'm saying? Like,
Pause.
All the trim he claimed to have, we don't have another Will Chamberlain standing out there. So at the end of the day, it's.
But okay.
I want to read Can I read the definition of evolution? Now, yeah. I think we're talking about.
His lag kicked him.
Lag. Okay, I'll just throw it in, right? Like Abraham Lincoln was 6'5" in 1965.
What the?
18. Hold on. Please let me
Okay.
The reason why he was considered a abnormally tall human. Now, in 1965 and 2025, 160 years later, he's just considered a tall human. The reason why is because of nutrition from that era, not necessarily genetics. So again, yeah, you would consider Abraham Lincoln like the equivalent of a 6'10" guy, but then as the Industrial Revolution and things like that,
when people mention sports being more advanced, who mentions them when they come out of the womb? Who mentions them before they reach their
but if you're talking scientific evolution, see, it's not evolution of the human. It does not work. It does not work where a guy can be that much taller.
We're talking
Yeah,
about
we are
sports.
talking about sports, and we're talking about heights and weights and sizes. And so right, we can sit there and tell you that yes, the training methods and the recovery methods and stuff like that. Yeah, the trainers and all this is a whole science that's into the game now that you can say yes is an advantage. But if I'm going to look back and they had one trainer, now you got a whole goddamn training goddamn team now. Now you got 10 10-man coaching staff. You had one coach and one assistant coach back in the day. That's actually advantage to, so everything I'm going to look at from back then, they didn't have certain advantages. I'm going to
Yes,
even look,
they didn't.
say again,
I said yes, they didn't. They didn't.
they didn't
But
have it. So
they
I'm going
didn't
to look
have
at what
it.
they did because they played on the same size court. They played an 82 game schedule. I think it went from 70 to 80 basically in the 60s, right? So, same thing, travel advantages and all of that. Everything weighs out. And again, that bigger, stronger, faster thing is a little bit overdone because, as I said, you can look at film of guys doing the same moves. You can look at Dr. J making the same crazy tomahawk dunks in his day, in the late 60s, early 70s, and can see the same amount of amazement. That's all I'll say on that. But the evolution of the human, no, it's not. No, the guys are the same size and can probably jump the same height.
All I'm saying is, well, first off, to Dart's definition, that is the definition of actual evolution. However, we're talking sports. Oftentimes I don't understand why we do this thing where we give definitions of an absolute rather than giving it to the exact description of what we are talking about. There's a definition that is actually on the National Institute of Health of what evolution means in sports, and we choose not to use it. The definition is the continuous process of change, development, and advancement in games, training methods, rules, and athletic performance over time.
Okay, cool.
And in that sense, it is not refutable that today's era of sports is more has evolved. It is more advanced than it was back then. To your point, Ro, I agree with you
Okay.
1,000%. I think everybody agrees with you. Like, yes, the reason why they're more advanced, the reason why it has evolved is because of the advantages that they can take, that they can be able to benefit off of compared to back then. But that's not that even though you can add that context, the statement is still stands true. They have evolved. They have
Cool. So
evolved.
then,
And
so
then
then,
mentioning one person or mentioning one instance of a dominance of athleticism superiority compared to everything else that has encountered over
dang.
the last 20 years. I think that is a very flawed way of thinking about this.
Hi, baby.
Well, interesting takes, guys. I mean,
Mute your mic, bro, man. We hear the love in the background, man. We don't want to disrupt that, man.
Well, with that being said, guys, you can go ahead and get everyone's final here and kind of wrap. But I mean, I think all in all, very good takes upon a variety of subject. I mean, I definitely get what you're saying.
Really no beef. I'm talking about the training methods has evolved versus the.
As I was saying, we're gonna wrap it up. We'll get everyone's final take here, and starting with Dart. And you can comment on whatever, not just the evolution thing, but we can comment on whatever we're talking about here. Whether it's today's topic, which is about the era argument there. We touched lightly on the Kobe, LeBron, whatever ranking players, and kind of that. But Dart, what is your final take on whatever it is?
I just want to say casual. Urban Dictionary is where I pull my definitions. And evolution, the number one definition of evolution is how your Pokemon change at certain levels. So there you go.
Oh,
I also wanted to add that Zion, people were talking about Zion Williamson with his gravity. Yes, he pulls a lot of gravity in the scientific definition for how big he is. Forgot to throw that zinger in there.
Oh my God.
Zing.
That's fire. That is fire. That's fire, Dart.
Yeah, But no, but past that, I thought that was a great discussion. Thanks for coming up here, Casual Row.
For sure.
I forget the other guy's name, Scott, I think.
Yeah.
But thanks for coming up. I thought it was a great discussion.
Yeah, it
Okay.
was. It 1000%.
Casual, what is your final take?
All in all, great conversation. As far as competition being greater in certain eras, it really just depends on what you value. As typically everything that we talk about, my stance on it, whatever you value, try to be as consistent as possible. So if you value the defensive side of the basketball, I don't see why 2000s doesn't have a case at the very least of being top two. Along with the 90s, if you value the offensive side of the basketball, I don't see why today's era or the 70s or the 80s would not be up there with how they were making shots at an efficient rate. It's just be consistent on what you value. And competition is subjective, because to you may not view the standard today as superior to the standard of yesteryears. So that's all I got to say about that.
And we'll get to you. Actually, yeah, Ro, what is your last take?
Yeah. So again, I just want to wrap my ball. I apologize because I ran into I came to the pool area and my people as well. They're greeting me or whatever. But anyway, I just want again to wrap the bow up. To wrap the bow up is like I said. End of the day, it's all the evolution is in the training. And I think me and Casual will agree with that. Rather than the actual athlete. Now, does that benefit the actual athlete? It probably does. But as I want to wrap the bow again, you have to, when you look at the competition, era by era, you just judge it based on what you see, knowing that, guess what? Everybody in that era had to deal with the same thing. So obviously, right? Everybody in that era had to deal with the same things, same training methods, everything else. And you judge the competition era by era. But you can't, it's really hard to compare again, because like I said, we now have surgeries that can repair the ACL, that can repair the Achilles. Guys felt, if you look at a guy falling off, maybe he strained his Achilles or tore his Achilles and then had to let it heal naturally, and he never became the same guy. Now we got careers being extended. But that's great. At the end of the day, you have what you have. And it is good that we have research and analytics and everything else to change the game and improve it. But it's not to say that this game is better than that game. You just judge what you see. And at the end of the day, I think it's a perfect science. You just look at the numbers, you look at what people did in their certain eras, you compare it, and you move on.
All right, and yeah, to kind of piggyback off that, I think we had a great discussion there. And yeah, I just kind of wanted to kind of reemphasize this as a parting shot there, is that, and this is mainly to everyone in the chat too. If you use certain things to rank players, like that's what we're all about here, right? Like we want different points of view, various takes, just come with it and be consistent. Like we're trying to get away from the narrative structure where it just, we're trying to hype up certain people or certain play, whatever. We just want to be a holistic, area where we can discuss the game, in general. And yeah, like I said, obviously we discuss the Kobe LeBron thing ad nauseum all the time, but it's, if someone tells me they want to pick Kobe over LeBron for any reason, I'm not mad. It's just whatever. But that being said, it's a look out for all of our content. We're going to be next week, and obviously this weekend you had. Obviously we were joined here by Kings Beach Row. Check now, we have Casual here, obviously, and we'll have Ukat his CW. I just want to plug his channel too, and go cast hoops. There we go. But with that being said, we appreciate everyone participating today, and we'll be back with another show with much more discussion happening next week. And so with that, we're gonna go in and have a fantastic rest of your Sunday.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Peace.